You know, if you've ever watched your dog settle in for the night, you might have noticed a pretty fascinating pattern in how they choose to sleep. It's something so incredibly common, yet so deeply misunderstood by almost all of us. So today, in this explainer, we're going to talk about our best friends and look closely at this quirky little habit they have. Picture your dog right now. They trot into the room, do that mandatory little circle routine a few times, and finally flop down with a heavy sigh. But look at where their nose is pointing. More often than not, they're positioned squarely facing the exit, just watching the door. So why do they do that? What do you think is actually going through their furry little heads in that exact moment? Okay, let's dive into this, because the answer is probably the exact opposite of what you've been telling yourself. If you think your dog is facing the door because they're valiantly protecting you, well, you're in for a pretty big surprise today. We are going to completely shatter those expectations and look at the real science behind canine sleep patterns.
Here's how we're going to break this explainer down today. First, number 1, the bodyguard myth. Next, number 2, the ancient den instinct. Then 3, it is not about you. And finally, number 4, the breathing test.
All right, starting right off with section 1, the bodyguard myth, guarding or instinct.
Let's address the story we literally all love to tell ourselves about our dogs. Ask any dog owner why their dog sleeps facing the door, and for sure, you'll hear the exact same answer. Oh, they're guarding us. And it feels so true, doesn't it? It absolutely looks like loyalty in action. We love this idea that our dogs are acting as our personal bodyguards, keeping an eye out for danger. But canine behaviorists actually tell us that's kind of an ego-driven myth. The real science shows this is just an instinct passed down from their ancestors. It's not a conscious duty, and it's definitely not a decision they're actively making to protect the house.
Moving on to section 2, the ancient den instinct, survival of the fittest. To really understand where this behavior comes from, the absolute crucial piece of the puzzle is that dogs are den animals. Out in the wild, their ancestors slept in dens, which are just enclosed spaces with only one entrance. Positioning themselves to have a totally clear view of that single entrance was 100% about survival. It was about control, not aggression. They simply wanted to see who was coming and going before anyone could get too close to them.
Let's walk through this timeline because it perfectly maps out how this evolved. Thousands of years ago, sleeping facing the entrance meant survival. Seeing a threat early gave them precious, life-saving time to react. Fast forward generations later, and that behavior wasn't really a choice anymore. That instinct became permanently hardwired into the dog's brain. And that brings us to today. Your dog is still relying on this ancient survival tactic, carefully monitoring the perimeter, even though the biggest, scariest threat in your house is probably just the vacuum cleaner.
Which brings us to section 3, it is not about you, managing dog anxiety.
So if they aren't actually guarding us from wild predators, what in the world is happening in your modern living room? Well, get ready, because this shifts the focus away from ancestral history and directly into modern canine psychology. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it completely flips our perspective. Read this quote with me. This behavior isn't really about protecting you. It's about your dog managing their own anxiety. I know, that might bruise the owner's ego just a tiny bit, but it is deeply fascinating. It's not about them being your bodyguard at all. It's entirely about internal regulation. When your dog can physically see the entry point of the room, some pretty amazing things happen in their body. First off, their nervous system doesn't have to stay stuck on high alert. Second, their brain isn't working overtime, constantly wondering what might be sneaking up behind them. Because they have visual control of the space, they can finally, truly let their guard down. And the ultimate result of all this? This positioning actually allows them to fall into a much deeper, far more restful sleep, way faster.
And finally, section 4, the breathing test, instinct or anxiety.
We've talked a lot about the theory, but now I want to give you a practical way to apply this knowledge and actually diagnose your own dog's behavior. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference between a dog who is just following a healthy instinct and a dog who is genuinely stressed out. So how do you know if it's healthy instinct versus real anxiety? You watch their breathing. Looking at the healthy instinct column, we see slow, steady breaths, maybe some occasional cute little paw twitching, and they're clearly in a deep sleep. They're relaxed, just instinctively positioned toward the door. But look over at real anxiety. If your dog has a tense body, their ears are pinned back, or they're waking up at every single tiny sound, that's a sign of true anxiety. They aren't just relying on instinct anymore. They are on edge. And actually, that might be something worth talking to your vet about. So here is a little bit of homework for you tonight. Step 1, just check where your dog decides to sleep and see which way they're facing. Step 2, watch your breathing patterns using the table we just went over. Are they relaxed or are they tense?
And step 3, come back and comment your findings below with a simple yes or no. Does your dog sleep facing the door, and are they relaxed? I really want to know, and I honestly read every single one of your comments. I want to leave you with this final thought today. Take a look at your dog tonight and ask yourself, is your dog's ancestral instinct actually helping them relax, or is it keeping them on edge? Understanding these tiny little details completely changes how we relate to our pets. If you love uncovering the fascinating science behind your dog's daily instincts, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next explainer. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.